Kiev and surrounding areas. The UK's new Defence Secretary, Wes Streeting, was in Kiev after the attacks and held talks with President Zelensky. Russian strikes are intensifying, with missiles launched at Ukraine up 83% over the last 31 days compared with the same period in 2025, according to BBC Verify analysis of Ukrainian
I'll be
Air
back.
Force
I'm gonna go
data.
get a cup of water.
Over the same time, it found the proportion of incoming missiles Ukraine intercepted fell from 2/3 to just under half. Today, Ukraine again hit a warehouse owned by Russia's leading online retailer, with at least 20 such warehouses reportedly attacked since July the 18th. Dan Johnson is in Kiev for us now. Dan.
Yes, the last 24 hours have vividly illustrated to everyone here that despite all Ukraine's military achievements, its advancements in drone warfare and its success in taking the fight increasingly deeper into Russian territory, still the skies above Ukraine are not safe. We've seen an intensification of attacks by both sides, a ramping up and a new phase of this conflict, which means people here really are struggling now to sleep soundly at night. Kyiv hadn't seen a night like this for weeks. A deadly wave of ballistic missiles that came with little warning and no chance of interception. It wasn't just Kyiv, but this city felt the worst impact. Warehouses seemed to have been the main target, but homes were also hit.
We had the third floor, we had the roof. Yeah, it was another floor.
On the edge of the city, Anastasia's trying to work out if there's anything left.
It was so scary, I must say. This was my scariest night during the 5 years. My scariest night.
At the nearby railway station, 7 warehouse workers and a child were killed, having been evacuated from their building when the sirens sounded. There were 28 ballistic missiles fired by Russia last night, none of them intercepted by Ukrainian air defences. Is that because they've run out of interceptors? Is it because they're having to ration their supplies so carefully given the shortage? Ukraine's president called his military advisors together and he was clear. Lives are being lost because his country doesn't have enough missile interceptors.
We recognize that this is a major challenge. We made it through a difficult winter, but the reduction in supplies became more noticeable with each passing month. Today, we are facing a clear shortage.
Welcome. So nice to see you.
Also in Ukraine's capital, the new British Defence Secretary, bringing moral support, but no guarantees.
We've been looking very closely at Ukraine's requirements. We're working through a whole list of those requirements. Where the UK has the ability to provide, we will. And where we don't, it's my job to mobilise the international community to step up.
Another warehouse was ablaze south of Moscow last night, the next round of Ukraine's attacks on Russia's biggest online retailer. The Wildberries distribution network has been under repeated assault in recent weeks. Its workers have been killed. So were 7 Russian holidaymakers at this beach on Monday, struck by a long-range Ukrainian drone believed to have been shot down. The Kremlin claims its citizens are being deliberately targeted. The Ukrainians insist not. But as this war ramps up, Vladimir Putin shuffled his military leadership, announcing a new head of drone forces to counter the growing threat. It is, though, the people of Ukraine who've been reminded that their skies remain vulnerable, and that's going to mean more nervous nights ahead. Dan Johnson, BBC News in Kyiv.
In all this noise, the Zapruder fountain.
Stages of an agreement with its neighbor Oman on shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. That is according to the BBC. An Iranian official told MS Now the deal would not include any fees or tolls and would be a temporary agreement.
Here, guys, I'm gonna just listen to my stream because I want to see if my audio sounds decent. I'm gonna just listen to my stream real quick. Let's see. My audio seems kind of low. I don't know why my audio is getting picked up kind of low. Let me see how I sound now, if I don't sound too loud. Let me just talk right now. Let me see how I sound. I'll just put it like that. Hello, hello, yeah, let me see how I sounds right now. Sorry about that, my audio was super low. I don't know why my mic wasn't getting super, like, picked up.
To get back to the negotiations that started during the ceasefire earlier this summer. That is good news. That official says the deal is expected to be announced very soon and that the U.S. would be involved in the announcement. Our panel is back with us. All right, Peter, that seems like this deal is more of a first step than an end of the crisis, but it definitely sounds like a positive.
Well, I mean, we don't know how involved the American side has been up till now. Is this something that they would go along with? This has been a negotiation between Iran and Oman, both of which have an interest that's different than, say, President Trump's interest. But it does sound like it's possible that this gets us back to where we were about 4 or 5 weeks ago. But that was only a place where we stopped the fighting in order to have further talks. So we'll see. I mean, there have been any number of days when we've heard that a deal is imminent, a deal is about to be made, a deal will be made by tomorrow, a deal will be made by the end of the week. So we should take all this with a considerable grain of salt. But I think that obviously, at the moment, without large numbers of bombs and missiles being flung at each other, they do seem to be trying to head towards some sort of more of a diplomatic resolution to this.
So then, Kevin, if to Peter's point, at best, we could potentially get back to where we were 4 or 5 weeks ago, not even 4 or 5 months ago. What is this like for all of these House members who are already in their home districts? Senators are going to be joining them this weekend. How frustrated, how difficult is it for Republicans who have to answer questions about this war?
I mean, this just complicates things for them, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I have found talking to Republicans, though, is that at least publicly, they are not willing to cross the president on this when it comes to, among other things, the idea of gas prices going up or the idea of trying to put some guardrails around this conflict, be it through a declaration of war or a war powers resolution in Congress. We have seen those advance, of course, but by slim margins with only a handful of Republicans joining in either chamber. And so this is kind of this weird, complicated path that they're going to have to now weave, where they want to, obviously, and they feel compelled, even though his polling is in the 30s, they feel compelled to stand by the president. They feel compelled to make the argument, as they have for months now, that this was a necessary step to be taken because Iran has been a threat for years upon years, but at the same time, navigate the consequences of what this war has wrought. And even if we go back a few weeks, that still leaves the instability, and that leaves numerous questions about whether or not we could see another spike in the conflict in the lead up to the war, or lead up to election day. And obviously we know what has just happened in the last few weeks, which has only frustrated Republicans more, as they, at least behind the scenes, are trying to figure out, okay, how do we explain this to voters back home? Like I said in the last segment, they weren't talking about the tax cuts. They don't want to be talking about, okay, now how do you explain the gas prices? I was in Virginia, one last point, I was in Virginia just earlier this week talking to a Republican voter, and who said that he's a diehard Republican, loves Trump, and I was like, well, is there anything that he has done that you would like him to do differently? And he was like, I wish he would get the gas prices fixed. So,
and by the way, great. You want to talk about the tax cuts? Super. Those voters are going to say that money is poof, gone, finished, finito. I needed it so I could get groceries, buy back to school clothes, and put gas in the car. Dave, take us through the campaign trail. What are you hearing from both sides, both campaigns and voters about this war? Because I would love to know, who are the enthusiasts? Who are those who are saying we are doing the right thing?
From Republicans and Republican voters, you hear very little about it. You've seen this in South Carolina, where there's a very quick election to replace Lindsey Graham, probably the biggest advocate for the war in the Congress. And the candidates for that have tried to end the conversation as possible by saying, well, it's a 47-year conflict, and we're glad he did it, and can we talk about affordability, can we talk about men and women's sports, etc. Among Democrats, top of mind, it's actually a thing Democrats often pivot to when you're talking to the candidates. Voters, a thing that is on their minds too. And
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize my audio was so low. Like, sorry about that on my stream. I just realized my audio was super low. That's kind of bizarre that my audio, I don't have the, no, I don't have the thing. I don't know why my audio is so low. Let me see how I sound right now. I'm gonna just quickly look at my stream for a second because I want to see my audio is low because it was super low. Yeah, let me see now. Hopefully this is much better because it was way too low. There you go. I'm afraid of my audio being super low. The last couple of videos I've done on my channel, I've noticed like my audio was low. My microphone audio.
Hi.
Iran says that is the only way the Strait of Hormuz can be reopened safely. Basically, Tehran wants pretty much everything that was on the original and essentially abandoned Memorandum of Understanding. Remember that? The MOU put back on the table. This comes as Iran says it's talking with Oman and that they are both close to finalising a proposed deal to get shipping on the move again in the Strait. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister quick to deny that talks are with the US. On top of all of this, Lebanon appears to be back in the mix. More on that in a moment. I also want to alert you to a warning from some leading shipping groups. They say any Hormuz tolls demanded by Iran could drive up costs and threaten open navigation. We've got a lot to cover. Elena Tree at White House. Leila Karagoslu is here in London. And Leila, let's just start with this potential agreement between Iran and Oman at this stage. Even that, as we understand it, not a done deal, not as far as we know at this point, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Iranians have said that they're very close to a proposed framework. So even when this gets announced, it's not going to be considered a full deal. They've made it really clear that it's going to be a bilateral agreement between themselves and Oman. And through that agreement, it's really going to solidify the sovereignty that Iran and Oman have over the Strait of Hormuz. They've also made it very clear through the Deputy Foreign Minister that this isn't necessarily going to open the Strait for all shipping. This is going to be a new pathway. It's going to be something to help alleviate it, but it's not going to really open the Strait. For the Strait to be opened, they've been very clear there needs to be certain things that the U.S. does. And a lot of those things, as you said, really are what was in the MOU. They include ending the naval blockade on Iranian ports, addressing the sanctions that were imposed on Iran when that MOU was collapsing. They also are
ending the naval blockade on Iranian ports, addressing sanctions,
calling for a resumption of negotiations over Tehran's frozen assets, and then also addressing the U.S.'s, quote, failure, they say, to ensure stability in Lebanon. Now, the Deputy Foreign Minister was asked about whether this was just Iran trying to implement Article 5 of the MOU, and he said it wasn't. He said that this really is a bilateral agreement re-looking at a relationship that has been 60 years in the making with Oman. Now, as you know, throughout the entire week, President Trump has said, the Iranians are talking, we're going to have a deal, but the Iranians are holding steadfast by saying this is a bilateral agreement, it's just a framework, and it's going to be for a short period of time, just 1 to 3 months. Good to get us up to speed on that. Thank you, Leila. Elena, this is then ostensibly between these two key regional parties. I mean, earlier on this week, we did have from a senior official who was very familiar with the matter, telling us here at CNN that talks were between the US, Iran, and Oman at present. Not direct talks between Iran and the US, but there were these sort of tri-party talks. It's difficult to tell whether those were very specific about the Strait of Hormuz or whether these talks were about something sort of wider at this point. What is the administration saying about all of this?
Yeah, look, I think they have been involved in some of these discussions, of course, in recent days, even if not directly. I will tell you the conversations, Becky, I've been having with people here at the White House. They said that over the weekend, even people in Iran like Abbas Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister, are reaching out to people like Steve Witkoff, one of the key diplomats here in Washington, who has been very involved in these talks. So I think there has been a level of, the United States being a maybe not direct part of these talks, but clearly involved at some level. And we've heard the president say many times that a deal needs to be completed and quickly. He said by the end of the week, or he would resume striking Iran. Now, of course, how much stake do you put in those comments when the president has issued many threats like that just to pull back? But that is currently what the administration is trying to project publicly. On the other hand, you do have acknowledgement from people like the Vice President, J.D. Vance, someone who has led the delegation for these talks with the Iranians in the past, acknowledging that these have been very messy and that he says the Iranians have been very hard to deal with. Particularly, of course, you saw they had an MOU, it fell apart. Now they've exchanged strikes. Now they're trying to get back to the negotiating table. This has been going on, Becky, far longer than I think many people in the White House and throughout Washington expected it to. But I do want you to listen to some of the comments that Vance made in a Fox News interview last night.
I do think that where we will ultimately land, it's going to be messy and it's going to take some time to get there. Where we will ultimately land, as you see, oil I think was at $79 today. Those oil prices are going to come down and stay down. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, and the United States will be in a stronger position. But we're kind of in the middle of the game, and I think people are trying to prejudge exactly how this is going to go.
Now, I will say, from the president's perspective, and this is what many officials here tell me repeatedly, is that his goal is still what it has been from the beginning, Becky. He wants diplomacy to prevail. But he's keeping strikes, including the one he issued over the past weekend, on the table, should Iran really not make any sort of movement on the diplomatic front.
Well, with that in mind, Elena, before I let you go, tell me what President Trump is saying about reporting of severely depleted US defense missile stockpiles.
Yeah, Becky, just after midnight, the president today lashed out at a number of different media outlets who have been reporting on the depleted stockpile of munitions that the U.S. military has. He wrote on social media that the U.S. has massive amounts of munitions. He said, especially in certain types. He said large amounts are also being manufactured and shipped to the U.S., that they're working on deals to continue building up the stockpile. But this is something that has been a major, major, major problem for the Pentagon in recent months. This idea that they are burning through a lot of their missiles and munitions with the rate of strikes that have been issued throughout this war, and really throwing a lot of doubt and uncertainty on how this is going to impact the U.S. position in the war moving forward. I will note we had great reporting yesterday from our colleagues who had noted that the U.S. military has exhausted nearly 80% of its interceptors for a key missile defense system known as THAAD in recent months. They also reported that the U.S. military has burned through roughly half of its Patriot interceptors since the start of the war as well. I will note again, the president's been aware of this. I know in my conversations that different people in the military, throughout the intelligence community, have been telling the president about this. I think he's taking a big issue, though, with the idea that it's being publicized, that this is a problem, especially at a time when he wants Iran to believe that the U.S. has the power to continue hammering them. So this is something that's definitely going to continue playing a role, I think, in some of the negotiations behind the scenes, and also contributing to another thing that I've been told as well, which is that in the intelligence community, many leaders are very worried that Iran will ever honor commitments on any sort of deal that is made. So this really putting the U.S. position in a fragile place right now.
President Trump is insisting, despite numerous reports, that the U.S. has plenty of munitions and there is no shortage. He posted overnight that the military has, quote, massive amounts, adding that large amounts are being manufactured and shipped to the U.S. as needed. CNN and others have been reporting this whole week on dwindling stockpiles of key air defense systems during the war with Iran. Sources telling CNN the U.S. military has burned through roughly half of its Patriot interceptors since the start of the war and 80% of its THAAD missile inventory. Joining us now, former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Kurt Volker. It is good to have you with us. Thank you for being here. When you look at these numbers, the president is publicly denying there is a major shortage of stockpiles, but the numbers are the numbers, and they're tracked not just by us, but by many different organizations, including CSIS, who has looked at this, and they are dangerously low. So what advice would you be giving the president at this moment when you know that so many of these munitions that are being used directly in this war with Iran are on a very, very short scale?
Well, the fundamental thing is to make sure that you have an alignment of your goals and your means. So it's okay to use air defense systems. The people are sending missiles at our allies or at our troops. Okay, you have to use them. But you have to make sure that what we are doing has a guaranteed end result, that we can achieve what we are trying to do, and that at that end point, we will not be in a military action anymore. The problem with the way we've gone about this war against Iran is that we've lacked that. We have a constant effort to put pressure on Iran, never a willingness to go all the way for regime change, which would be one thing, or a willingness to accept that, okay, there's a status quo that we're going to live with. So we've been in this in-between, and that just creates an unending burn rate for the things that we're doing.
Yeah, just the Iran war. No end that sight. I think I'm gonna end the stream. Cheers, everybody. Like and subscribe to Hector's News and Politics. Some of the audio in this video, because this is gonna turn into a video, some of the audio in this video is gonna be messed up, so sorry about that. I don't know why. Like, I'm using a lavalier mic, and somehow like it wasn't super picking up the audio, so sorry about that. Like, my audio is gonna be all like mumbled up. Sorry about that, but like and subscribe to Hector's News and Politics. Ending the video. Cheers. Is there any way? No, I'm not gonna readjust the audio. The audio is gonna be kind of messed up again. Sorry about that, but yeah, it seems like what I covered today was Iran still hasn't done a deal, and Ukraine keeps getting hit by Russian missiles and drones. Yeah, I'm gonna end the video. Cheers. Bye.